Hello everyone, my name is Mark and this is my Renault Mégane story. So going back around 25 years now, around 1990, in fact no longer than that even, the Mégane name appeared around 1988 on a Renault concept car. Of course the production car that eventually came looked nothing like, and late in 1995 Renault released the Mégane in France to replace the Renault 19. Now under the skin there was very much the same car, there are a lot of similarities, but styling wise the Mégane aped the larger Laguna that came a few years earlier, and Auto and Design magazine, dated December 95, showing the original model here, the coupe version, and inside lots of sketches and pictures of the design process, various different models before we got to the production vehicle. But at the time I was a teenager riding about in my dad's Renault 5, which was a great car, but by that point the Clio had already been out a few years, and when the Mégane came along it was quite a step up. And here is the original brochure I had from 1996, and obviously spent a lot of time eagerly awaiting delivery of my dad's first Mégane on a 96N registration, yeah, when they came out they actually did draw quite a lot of attention, because it was quite radically different to a lot of other vehicles on the road. I mean, Ford was still selling the Escort, the Focus was still a few years away, and the hot hatches had become very difficult to insure because they was always getting stolen and crashed. And coupes, the 90s was a great time for coupes. Probably the nearest competitors to the Mégane I would think would have been the Mazda MX-3 and the VW Corrado, that was of a similar size. Size down, you had the Tigra out, the Puma was probably a year or so away. Going up a size, you could have had the Fiat Coupe or the Alfa 916 GTV, which were both fantastic cars, though probably somewhat more expensive than the Mégane. So obviously this initial brochure, we've got the 16 valve there with the legendary F7R engine as found in the Clio Williams, and the one a lot of people forget about, the Spider. There was also a 2 litre 8 valve, and the one my dad had was the base spec 1.6e with steel wheels, no rear spoiler, no fog lamps, no sunroof, and manual wind up windows, if you remember those. But none of this really mattered, because at the time, as I say, Ford was still selling the Escort, and this actually did look almost borderline exotic at the time, which is hard to think looking back now. Yeah, as a teenager I always dreamt of owning one, and when I got my first car, obviously I got driven in my dad's Mégane to pick up, which was a Renault 5. Now I went through a few Renaults myself, the 5s, Clios, and eventually I did get a Mégane, but by this point it was the early 2000s, and it was the 3-door Mégane 2 Sport Hatch, and it was a very different car to the Mark 1. You know, a heck of a lot more equipment in the car, but it was a bigger car, it was a heavier car, and mine being one of the early ones with all the toys on, most of them broke, didn't work right, and after a few years of ownership most of the niggles were solved, but of all the cars I've owned, that one just didn't quite win my heart in the same way as some of the others, and I swapped that for a Laguna 2 Privilege, which was probably one of the nicest cars I've ever owned. But then I had a few years away from Renaults, and last year I started looking around, and I thought, yeah, new cars are not really doing it for me anymore, and I wanted something, a bit of a project, didn't want to spend a fortune, and I started looking at various things. I thought, oh, I'd love an old Rover P5 or an SD 1 Vitesse, but they're tens of thousands of pounds now for a good one. Rover R8's 200 series, they're again one of those cars sort of at the bottom of the market, but the values are going up, and to be honest, I'd given up on ever owning a Phase 1 Mark 1 Mégane. I just thought, I'll never find one. I'll never afford a Clio Williams or a 16 valve. So I'd given up on the idea. And then one evening out of the blue, trawling through the internet, I come across a Mégane 1.6e Fiji for sale. And I ponder over it for a couple of days, and eventually I think, well, you know what, I'm going to have to go and have a look at this car. And short of it is, I ended up bringing it home. And then the fun started. So what I've compiled here is a series of video clips and photographs taken throughout the last few months. Now the car is currently on Sawn, but I hope to have it on the road within the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, ideally. So it's very near to being ready. Now the car's very original, very complete. Still got its original radio cassette, the original Fiji floor mats that the car came with. It just needs a bit of TLC. So I've initially been doing a lot of servicing on the car, you know, changing oil filters, plugs, fuel filter, various other bits and bats. The next job on the list at the time of doing this video is the timing kit and drive belts, which I've actually got. They just haven't been fitted yet. I've changed the radiator, hoses, various other little bits. So the car is getting there. So sit back and enjoy these somewhat eclectic, random clips. Most of this being done on a smartphone as well. No external microphones or anything. So apologies if the quality is not brilliant. But yeah, I hope you get some enjoyment out of watching it, and hopefully at some point, once everything's done and the car's on the road, I'll be able to give you a proper road test review of the car as well. So the deal was done, the car was loaded up and fetched 100 or so miles home. First job was to give everything a good clean. The car was a bit grubby, covered in moss, been stud so. But like I said, the car's are really original, and it started to clean up quite well. There's a few scrapes and dings on the bodywork, but things got a bit worse. The car wouldn't run, and we checked the plugs, then I thought it might be the coil pack, so tested those, but couldn't find out what the issue was, and in the end I had to get some help in, to be honest. But in the meantime we're doing other little jobs, so a little bit of plastic welding, or more of a plastic monstrosity by the time I'd done, but it made this HT lead holder a little stronger than it had been. So yeah, obviously, well, the car was stud, it was cold, middle of winter, so the battery was out for charging, and which gave me some better access into the battery tray for a bit of cleaning that needed to be done, cleaning drain holes, that sort of thing. So as I said, the car wasn't running, and we tried the OBD2 reader. Now the car does have an OBD2 port, but it turned out that it couldn't read the car. It's not compatible. So you need the Renault Clip software to actually be able to read the car. So so the OBD2 reader didn't help me on this occasion, but we eventually traced the fault to a third fuse box next to the battery, on the sort of just against the inside of the front offside wing, and water had run down the windscreen, got in, rotted out one of the fuses, and which had snapped off inside the holder. So current wasn't getting to the fuel pumps, so the car wasn't fueling. So luckily what we thought was a big problem turned out to be not too bad. So while waiting on parts being delivered, I refreshed a few of the components on the car. Another little thing that had been bugging me was the clock display wasn't working. Now, other things on the same fuse were functional, so I put that down to being a bulb, and as it happens, I was correct. It was just a bulb. So the dash comes away quite easy, the top on these. You just unclip the tweeter grills on top of the dash, and a few screws later the dash top comes off. A few torque screws then secure the instruments, the gauges and centre display, so that's easy to remove. Once that's done, it's just a case of accessing the panel at the back to swap the bulbs over, so all good. Almost everything on the car, equipment wise, is fully functional now. So there's the panel coming free, and on the back you've got your two displays, one being the radio display, which in this particular version is the RDS one. The earlier ones were a smaller display, the very early cars, and the other side the clock. So I took these wiper arms off to refresh, and the obviously they've probably been on there for the best part of 24 years, so the a little work had to be done to remove those. I also removed the mirror housings. I did have one mirror glass that was cracked to be replaced, but I also took the opportunity because the plastic had gone really grey, so I did a repaint on those. There's the old radiator and the contents. I did swap the coolant expansion bottle as well. On a lot of these Renaults of this era, they do tend to go brown, so I swapped that out, swapped the radiator. Again, we've got the battery trickle charge in there while working on the vehicle, just to keep it topped up. There's the K7M in all its glory. A very simple engine, a 1.68 valve. So obviously the radiator's out there. Original hoses still there. The hoses took a bit more sourcing. So while I was waiting, we got the radiator out, which exposed the front edge of the subframe, so I was able to give that a little bit of a tidy up as well. At some point it'd be nice to have the engine out of the car and drop the subframe and do a proper repair, but luckily I rubbed it back and it was mostly just surface corrosion. The paint had started to flake away. So there's a replacement radiator, the original cooling fan, and there things going back on, the cowling, the radiator, etc. New hoses. So, and the front of the car back together. Yeah, and there's the original one. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch. If you've enjoyed the video, let me know in the comments, because this is the first one I've done, and if you've enjoyed it, it'd be nice to know. And hopefully there'll be more videos coming along soon. Thank you. Also, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe. That way, if I do any further videos, you'll get notifications when they go live. Thank you.